So here's the way I always frame this for audiences. How many of you knew that Jim Comey came and testified in the Senate the other day? All right, you all raise your hand. You know that. How many of you know that that's the same day the House passed repeal and replace of Dodd-Frank? Every time I do this in audiences, like 2 hands go up. That's basically the point I've been trying to make, which is this is why we're telling people go to didyouknow.gop. Through all the noise and all the distractions, we are addressing the problems that people face in their everyday lives. That is what we are here to focus on. We understand that a lot of people don't know about that a lot of people aren't familiar with all the progress we've made and all the bills that we have passed in this first 6 months. Just yesterday, as Kevin just mentioned, we passed the expansion of the GI Bill. It's the biggest expansion of college aid for veterans in a decade. It means the GI Bill will keep doing what it has done for generations, giving opportunities to veterans and their families. Also this week, we're going to fully fund a pay raise for our service members. It's the biggest military pay raise in 8 years because the last 8 years we have seen our military getting hollowed out, and we're addressing that again for the second time this year, this week. It's well-deserved. The last point I want to make is about security on our borders. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to travel down to Texas, to McAllen, to go to the Rio Grande Valley and spend time with our Border Patrol. When you see what they're up against, it really gives you even greater respect for what they do. They clearly need more tools and more support to do their jobs effectively. So this week, we're going to take action on key elements of the President's strategy to secure our borders, including the resources for a physical barrier. I've got to tell you, when you go down there and meet with the Border Patrol themselves and you see the fact that the cartels are staging just over the river, there is a need for a physical barrier at many parts of this border. And that is what the Border Patrol, the experts on the ground who are in charge of keeping us safe and enforcing our laws, are telling us. That's why we're going to get this done this week. And we're going to keep working on our agenda to address the real problems that people care about so that we can improve people's lives, which is why we're here. Questions?
The President appears to be laying the groundwork to fire his Attorney General, then make a recess appointment of someone who could fire the special counsel. Does that concern you? Is there anything you can do to stop it?
Look, the President gets to decide what his personnel is. You all know that. That's his. He's the executive branch for the legislative branch. He determines who is hired and fired in the executive branch. That's his prerogative. If he has concerns or questions or problems with the Attorney General, I'm sure he'll bring him up with himself.
Would that be obstruction of justice if he was firing him because he recused himself from the Russia investigation?
It's up to the President to decide what his personnel decisions is and any possible fallout that comes from that. If he has concerns about anyone in the administration and the conduct of their jobs, I'm sure he's going to talk to them directly. Yeah. Okay.
The President says that the Attorney General has been weak, though, on investigating Hillary Clinton. Do you think that the Department of Justice should spend more time investigating her potential crimes?
What we're focused on here is doing our jobs. We're not focused on what the Department of Justice is or is not doing. We're basically trying to get our legislative agenda passed. And I think the best way we can support the President, the administration, is to move this agenda forward, which is what we all collectively promised we would do, and that's what our focus is. So we're not focused on micromanaging DOJ. Rachel.
It sounds like a lot of the members coming at the conference or over the past few days have talked about how they want to full GOP army, not just a scaled back version. Can you talk about why you guys are doing that? And then also, the Hartzler transgender issues seems to be something that a lot of people are pushing for. Do you envision that having a vote on the
We the majority of our conference is for the Hartzler Amendment, but as you saw in the NDAA, it didn't have a majority on the floor, but a majority of our conference is for the Hartzler Amendment. So the typical tension of an issue like that is occurring. With respect to these 4 bills, we have consensus for these 4 bills. We do not yet have full consensus on the other 8 bills. That's what we're working toward. We've made substantial progress. The appropriators have been working with the whip to get the rest of the members on board, and so we anticipate building support for the rest of our bills going into September. But right now, we have consensus on these 4 bills. We have consensus on funding our military, funding military construction, funding our veterans, and funding the border wall and the physical barrier that we need on the border. That's where we now have consensus. So when we get consensus, we're going to go and get it, and then we're going to go for more later, and we're making good progress on that. Jonathan.
This year, it's quite possibly managing that we can appropriations deal before we do an FY18 budget, which is the reverse of how that usually works. We did an FY17 budget just to do the reconciliation for healthcare. There's a lot of precedents and usual ways that things have been done in the budget process. The critics say it's been overturned and tossed aside this year. To what extent do you think was necessary to go through these policies that you say will help?
As you know, a budget resolution is an H-Con res, it's not an HR, meaning the budget resolution is not a law. And appropriations with the caps in place require a law change. And so a budget in and of itself does not do that. But where consensus has been reached in the Budget Committee, which came out with a unanimous Republican vote, is on these appropriation numbers. So we have reached consensus with respect to our appropriation numbers in the Appropriations Committee, in the Budget Committee, with respect to the Armed Services Committee and the NDAA. So we have found on the House side consensus on these appropriation numbers, and that is out of Budget Committee. The question of whether or not one comes before the other is kind of an academic exercise because you don't need a budget to pass appropriations. That's a totally different issue. So we're going to move both simultaneously, and I think at the end of the day, we'll get both done in law.
Does it undermine the budget committee? though?
Not in the least. Not in the least. I think the Budget Committee is the one. The Budget Committee and Diane Black are the ones who got everybody to talk to each other, who got consensus. If it were not for Diane Black and the Budget Committee, we would not have the kind of consensus that we now have, which is bringing these 4 bills to the floor today. Thank you.